Biya Patita Pavana Hetu Tava Avatara Mosama Patita Prabhu Napai Biya Patita Pavana Hetu Tava Avatara Mosama Patita Prabhu Napai Biya Tava Avatara Mosama Patita Prabhu Napai Biya Aha Prabhu Nityananda Premananda Sukhi Kripa Balokana Koro Ame Boro Dukhi Aha Prabhu Nityananda Premananda Sukhi Kripa Balokana Koro Ame Boro Dukhi Daya Koro Sitapati Advaita Gosai Tava Kripa Bole Pai Chaitanya Nitai Daya Koro Sitapati Advaita Gosai Tava Kripa Bole Pai Chaitanya Nitai Aha Swarup Sanatana Ruparagunat Bhata Yoga Sri Jiva Prabhu Lokanath Aha Swarup Sanatana Ruparagunata Bhata Juga Sri Jiva Prabhu Lokanath Daya Koro Śrī Acharya Prabhu Srinivas Ramachandra Sangamage Narottama Das Daya Koro Śrī Acharya Prabhu Srinivas Ramachandra Sangamage Narottama Das Śrī Krishna Caitanya Prabhu Daya Koro More Toma Bina Ke Dayalu Jagat Sangsare Śrī Krishna Caitanya Prabhu Daya Koro More Toma Bina Ke Dayalu Jagat Sangsare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivragacharya Astatarasada Sri Srimada's Divine Grace CC.Madhya.17.184 Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Grantaraj Śrī Caitanya-Caritāmṛta Madhya Ki Samaveta Bhaktavinda Ki Nitai Gaura Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Jaya Jaya Śrī Caitanya, Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Dvaita Chandra, Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda, Jaya Jaya Śrī Caitanya, Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Dvaita Chandra, Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Jaya Śrī Caitanya, Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra, Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. So Today we're reading from Śrī Caitanya-Caritāmṛta, chapter 17, entitled The Lord Travels to Vrindavan. Text number 184. Please repeat. Prabhu kohe sruta smriti jata rishi gana Sabe ekamata nahi bhina bhina dharma Prabhu kohe sruti smriti jata rishi gana Sabe ekamata nahi bhina bhina dharma Prabhu kohe shruti smriti jata rishi gana Sabe ekamata nahi bhina bhina dharma Prabhu kohe shruti smriti jata rishi gana Sabe ekamata nahi bhina bhina dharma Prabhu kohe shruti smriti jata rishi gana Sabe ekamata nahi bhina bhina dharma Prabhu kohe shruti smriti jata rishi gana Sabe ekamata nahi bhina bhina dharma Prabhu kohe shruti smriti jata rishi gana Sabe ekamata nahi bhina bhina dharma Prabhu kohe shruti smriti jata rishi gana Sabe ekamata nahi bhina bhina dharma Prabhu kohe shruti smriti jata rishi gana Sabe ekamata nahi bhina bhina dharma Ladies? Prabhu kohe shruti smriti jata rishi gana Sabe ekamata nahi bhina bhina dharma Prabhu kohe shruti smriti jata rishi gana Sabe ekamata nahi bhina bhina dharma Prabhu kohe shruti smriti jata rishi gana Sabe ekamata nahi bhina bhina dharma Prabhu kohe shruti smriti jata rishi gana Sabe ekamata nahi bhina bhina dharma The word for word Prabhu kohe Lord Śrī Caitanya-Mahaprabhu said Shruti the Vedas Smriti the Puranas Jata all Rishigana great sages Sabe all of them Ekamata nahi do not agree Bhina bhina dharma different grades of religious principles. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Śrī Caitanya-Mahaprabhu replied, the Vedas, Puranas, and great learned sages are not always in agreement with one another. Consequently, there are different religious principles. Please repeat. Śrī Caitanya-Mahaprabhu replied, The Vedas, Puranas, and great learned sages are not always in agreement with one another. Consequently, there are different religious principles. So here's the purport. Unless one comes to the absolute truth, there is no possibility of agreement. Nasavrishir yashamatam nabhinam. It is said that a great learned scholar or sage cannot be exalted unless he disagrees with other scholars and sages. On the material platform, there is no possibility of agreement. Therefore, there are different kinds of religious systems. But the absolute truth is one. And when one is situated in the absolute truth, there is no disagreement. On that absolute platform, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is worshipable. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita 18.55, Bhakchamam abhijanati yavan yash chasmi tatvataha. On the absolute platform, the worshipful deity is one, and the process of worship is also one. That process is bhakti. There are many different religions throughout the world because they are not all on the absolute platform of devotional service. As confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 1866, Sarva dharmam parityajya mamekam sharanam braja. The word ekam means one, Krishna. On this platform, there are no different religious systems. According to Śrī.Madhya.17.184, dharma pradjita kaitavotra. On the material platform, religious systems are different. Śrīmad Bhagavatam describes them from the very beginning as dharma kaitavaha, cheating religions. None of these religions is actually genuine. The genuine religious system is that which enables one to become a lover of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the words of Śrīmad Bhagavatam 126, Savai punksham paro dharmo yato bhaktiratoksaji ahoitukya pratiyata yayatma suprasidati. The supreme occupation, dharma, for all humanity is that by which men can attain to loving devotional service unto the transcendental Lord. Such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted in order to completely satisfy the self. On this platform there is nothing but the service of the Lord. When a person has no ulterior motive, there is certainly oneness and agreement of principles. Since everyone has a different body and mind, different types of religions are needed. But when one is situated on the spiritual platform, there are no bodily and mental differences. Consequently, on the absolute platform, there is oneness in religion. Prabhu kohe shriti smriti jatta rishigana sabha eka mata nahi bhina bhina dharma. Śrī Caitanya Mahaprabhu replied, the Vedas, Puranas, and great learned sages are not always in agreement with one another. Consequently, there are different religious principles. Om Ajnanatamrandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Śrī Caitanya-Manobhistang Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandehang Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalang Shri Gurun Vaishnavangscha Shri Rupam Sagra Jata Raganatan Tangditam Tang Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Pada Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitangscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabando Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Brindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vanshakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa sindubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jai Śrī Krishna Caitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So I request the blessings of all the assembled devotees, especially senior devotees like Manjuali Mataji. Thank you for coming. It's said in the Nectar of Devotion, it is an offense not to smile when you see a devotee. Manjuali is always smiling. Thank you. So my gratitude to be given the chance to speak. This is a wonderful chapter. The previous chapter was the Lord's attempt to go to Vrindavan. And this chapter is the Lord travels to Vrindavan. So finally, he is successful. And in this chapter, he's not quite reached Vrindavan yet, but he's reached Mathura. Now at Mathura, next to the Janmastan, as part of the Janmastan complex, there is the Keshava temple. And what's happened is the Lord, on his travels, has been dancing and chanting, as he does. It's the Yuga Dharma. And when he comes to the Keshava temple, there is a pujari, old pujari, and he's dancing and chanting in great ecstasy as well. And the Lord is very curious how this person has such bliss, and he inquires from him. And this Brahman says he's a disciple of Madhavendra Puri, who is the grand spiritual master of Lord Chaitanya. And Lord Chaitanya could understand from this, yes, I can tell, because only someone connected to Madhavendra Puri could display such ecstasy. And he takes food at the house of this Brahmana. And what's interesting is there's a conflict of dharma here, because, and it's explained in a previous purport, the Sanodiya Brahmana, he's from the Sanodiya caste, they are a lower caste of Brahman, and therefore Lord Chaitanya should not have actually taken food from such a person. It's actually said, Vishayera ana kaila dushtamanahoi. If we take food from someone with lower consciousness, we will become affected. Dushtamanahoi, our mind will become polluted. So we have to be careful who we take food from. It can cause sinful reactions if we take food from a sinful person, and it can cause the contamination of our consciousness. And we need all the help we can get, because it's very difficult in Kali Yuga, because everyone's always disturbed. So one little technique is just be careful what we eat. And because when our eating is pure, then our consciousness will eventually become pure. And it takes time. Don't expect it to happen overnight. So that is the injunction. But Mahaprabhu, he's seen it differently, because he's thinking this Brahmana is a disciple of Madhavendra Puri. This food has been offered and accepted by Madhavendra Puri, therefore he is anxious to relish this. So Mahaprabhu, he's explaining the contradiction in Dharma, and he says, and it's all very interesting because we're talking here about the Vedas. What does Veda mean? It means knowledge. And yet, we find in this particular verse that there is Bina Bina Dharma. There is no agreement. So sometimes the critics of Vedic literature, they will say, we cannot trust the Vedas because they contradict. The Vedas contradict. So many scriptures say so many different things. And they see that as a weakness, as a fault. Others will say, it does not matter. Yatamat tatapat. We heard this phrase before. Prabhupada criticizes this. It's a way of trying to get unity when the scriptures are in disagreement. And this is just to say it doesn't matter. Because you follow your path, I'll follow my path, but ultimately we're all going to the same place, which is we're going to merge with the Supreme Brahman. At least some of them think that way. So whether you worship Durga, Shiva, Hanuman, Krishna, Ram, Vishnu, it's all the same. You go back to Godhead or whatever, you'll merge. Through your worship, you will come to the absolute platform. Both these conceptions are wrong. We cannot say contradiction is inherently wrong, and we cannot say that every path is the same. So there's a beautiful explanation of what's going on here in the Padma Purana, which is quoted by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu when he instructs Sanatana Goswami. Vyamohaya characharasya jagatas te purana gamas tam tameva hi devatam paramekam jalpantu kalpavadi siddhante punar eka eva bhagavan vishnu samasta gama vyapareshu vivechane vyatikaram niteshu nischiyate. This is the Padma Purana. It is saying the scriptures may say different things. One may say worship this God, it is supreme. Another may say worship this God, it's supreme. This is all an illusion. But if you read the whole scriptures together and you get the Siddhanta, Siddhante punar eka eva bhagavan Vishnu. There is only one God who is Vishnu. And of course we understand Vishnu is code for Vishnu, Krishna, Ram, Vamana, because as is common, some of the scholars of ISKCON, they refer to our tradition as polymorphic bimonotheism. It's a funny phrase. But polymorphic means so many forms, but there's one God. And why bimonotheism? Because he's always with his consort. Shrimati Radharani ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Gokulananda ki jai. Shri Shri Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman ki jai. Shri Shri Gaurnitai ki jai. So Krishna, when the curtains open eventually, Krishna is playing his flute in order to attract us back to him. And Srimati Radharani is giving blessings because she's holding her hand out. So, in the Caitanya-Caritāmṛta, it's also said, actually I'll finish this translation, it's a long translation. Siddhante punareka eva bhagavan Vishnu samastagama vyapareshu vivechane vetikaram. Vyapareshu means we take it all together. Niteshu nischayati. The definite conclusion is that actually there is only one God, Vishnu. So therefore, if we understand the purpose of the Vedas is to put people into illusion for a particular purpose and to bring them through, to progress them to a higher truth. That is actually the purpose of the Vedas. The question then arises, why should the Vedas bring us into illusion in the first place? What is the purpose of that? It is because we have material desires. Therefore, we're not ready for the true religion. Therefore, we have to follow motivated religion. Now, we're all very, very fortunate because we have come in contact with the books of Srila Prabhupada. So he has taken us beyond all the different conclusions of the different Vedas which contradict, and he has said, don't think it's jatamat tatapat, but actually understand there is a Siddhanta running through this, as a thread running through this. And who understands this thread? The Mahajans. The Mahajans are those that have understood truth. And it's actually mentioned in this purport, Nasav Rishir Yashamatam Nabinam. So let's talk about this phrase. This comes from the Mahabharata, and it's one of the most often quoted verses of the Mahabharata from the perspective of Srila Prabhupada. It's a very famous verse. Tarka pratishta shrutayo vibina nasav rishi yashamatam nibina dharmasya tatvam nihitam guhayam mahajano yenagata sapanta. This last line, if you listen to Prabhupada lectures, you should hear him say this a lot. Mahajano yenagata sapanta. Actually, Prakashananda Saraswati, he says, Mahajana je kohe se satcha mani. After he had the great fortune of coming in contact with Lord Chaitanya, he gave up his vain scholarship and he understood that satya, truth, is Mahajana je kohi, whatever the Mahajans say. And in this case, the Mahajan is Lord Chaitanya. Mahajan, we think of them as being 12 Mahajans, but actually anyone who understands Dharma fully, that person is qualified and can be considered a Mahajan. So the translation of this verse from the Mahabharata means Tarka Patishta, means logic has no foundation. Shrutaya, Vibina, the Shrutis, the Vedic literature, they are all saying different things. Nasav Rishi Yasamatam Nabina. One is not considered a Rishi unless one comes up with a new conclusion. That is why in the scholarship, You don't get a PhD if you just repeat someone else. You have to come up with something new, then you're considered a modern-day rishi. Then, dharmasya tattvam nihitam guhayam. But actually, if you want real truth, it is in the hearts of the Mahajans. Therefore, that is why our process is to serve the pure devotees, and then they impart knowledge unto us, and in the heart of the Mahajan, from that heart of the Mahajan, we are enlightened. That is actually our process. And if we come in contact with the Vedas, and we do not have a spiritual master, someone on that platform, then we will not understand the Vedas. As Prabhupada would often say, Acharyavan Purusho Veda. You understand the Vedas if you learn through the Acharya, you see. And then Mahajano Yena Gatasa Panta, because the path is to follow in the footsteps of the Mahajans. Now actually this verse, this was spoken by Yudhisthira Maharaj. Now there was a pastime when the Pandavas were in the forest, they were thirsty and they came to a lake, and being very thirsty, they just wanted to drink. But then there was a crane, a bird, it was actually a yaksha in the form of a bird, and this bird spoke, "Do not drink from this lake until you answer my questions." And the Pandavas, they were very thirsty, a little bit impatient, maybe a little bit proud of their prowess, their strength, and they thought, well, we're not going to listen to this bird. So each of the Pandavas, one after another, when they were given that instruction, they ignored it and they drank the water and they fell down dead. But then Yudhisthira was the last to come. But he, being more thoughtful, more pious, he's considered the most righteous and pious of the Pandavas, he decided, yes, I will answer these questions. This is an unusual request, but I will answer the question. And the questions are very wonderful. There's a whole list of them. And one of them, this is the answer to, I think the question was, what is Dharma? This is the answer to that. There's some other wonderful questions. The Yaksha asks, what is the heaviest burden in the world? Or what is the heaviest thing in the world? Who knows the answer to that one? The answer is a mother's love. What is higher than the sky? The father. Yes. Some of them were like tricky ones. Who sleeps without closing their eyes? The fish. You know all the answers. You read the Mahabharata, you like the Mahabharata, it's your thing. And some beautiful ones. What is the news of the world? There used to be a newspaper called The News of the World, right? So this Yaksha asks, what is the news of the world? And Yudhisthira Maharaj gives a wonderful answer. He says, the sun is, we're all in a frying pan. The sun is the fire. The seasons are the spoon. Night and day is the fuel. And we're all just basically suffering in ignorance, being fried in a pan. And time is the cook. So we always, have you noticed this? Year after year, when you wake up in the morning, you think to yourself, you know what, I never used to feel quite like this. I'm getting a little bit older, and it gets more and more. It takes longer and longer to get out of bed, and etc. And you see the brahmacharis, they're all springing out of bed, and they're thinking, we're pure devotees, everyone else is in Maya. But they don't realize when they're 60 and 70, they may be not getting out of bed either. It can be like that. Goes to show Prabhupada, he was very, very special, because even as an old man, so to speak, he was so transcendental that he would never miss Mangalarti, and he would chastise his disciples so much when they didn't attend Mangalarti. I remember I used to live at Soho Temple just now and again. I was really passing through, and one time I was locked out because I went to a Pandavasena program, and I got back around 11:30, and the temple was locked, and we were banging on the door, and we couldn't get in, me and one other devotee. And finally, at around 12:30, we were fortunate there was some pujari working late, and they came out and let us in. So I finally got to sleep. I was so stressed I got to sleep about 2 o'clock in the morning. And then I woke up at 5 o'clock, and it was Mahajuti Prabhu was shaking me. And he said, "Prabhu, why were you not at Mangalarti?" And I gave him my excuse, thinking he would be happy with that excuse. But he was not even happy with that excuse. And I thought it was a lesson to me. I thought, I want to have that deep faith that I shall attend Mangalarti regardless. And I'm not on that platform. But anyway. That's the story. So we mentioned, see, the reason why this particular pastime has been discussed is because the Dharma, the Sanodaya Brahma, the Dharma was not to eat the food, and yet Mahaprabhu transcended that with the Paradharma. Paradharma means the real religion. So in the purport, there's several verses which describe Dharma. Actually, I think there's 4 verses quoted, and 3 of them have the word Dharma in them. So the first one, Sarva Dharmam Prityaja Mamekam Sharanam Braja. So that is the conclusion of the Bhagavad Gita. And the second verse that's quoted is Dharma Projita Kaitavotra, which is the beginning of the Śrīmad Bhagavatam. So we understand the progression that the Śrīmad Bhagavatam is taking us where the Bhagavad Gita finishes. There's so many dharmas, there's so many yoga systems that Krishna is explaining to Arjuna. And one may ask the question, well, if he's going to reject everything at the end, why did he wait? Why take 700 verses if he's just going to say, give up all religion? But the point is, if Arjuna or Krishna missed anything out, someone could come along later and go, yeah, but he never mentioned that, etc. So all the bases are covered, all the different systems, Dharma, Yoga, Sankhya, Jnana Yoga, Karma Yoga. There's even the Arjuna Vishada Yoga, the lamentation yoga, just to lament. We find that people come to Krishna consciousness often because they lament. There's some catalyst to bring them to the devotees because they're suffering. So therefore that's Vishada. That can bring one to Krishna. If we're like, Prabhupada talks about smashana vairagya, the renunciation of the crematorium. That when people, they're very worldly, and then one of their relatives dies, suddenly they become very thoughtful and very renounced. But then it doesn't last. After a few weeks or a few months, they're back to their enjoying spirit. This is known as smashana vairagya, the renunciation of the crematorium. Now I like to do different types of sankirtan. One of my favorites is going part of the funeral service. I don't do it very often, but sometimes I get invited to go to attend a funeral. Then we do some Harinam, Sankirtan. And I find these kirtans are the best, because everyone's very, very somber, very thoughtful. They're in a nice mood. They're not joking around, and they're taking it very seriously, because a funeral is a very serious thing. And it's lovely of them when the coffin's going in for burning, we sing Nrsimha prayers, etc. And you get a lovely mood, very kind of strong, kind of spiritual vibe when people are remembering the passing of a relative, especially if that relative's a Vaishnava. I was just out doing Harinam Sankirtan yesterday. We were sitting down at Dean Street. Dean Street's just next to Soho. And a wonderful thing happened. There was a group of about 6 of us, but there were several Soho devotees distributing books, and some of our party were also distributing. So there was only 4 members of the Kirtan team. We were sitting down on a mat. And at one point, we were joined by 8 other members of the public. And they sat down and they chanted with us. And this wasn't one group of 8 people. This was 4 groups of 2 people. They all just, for some reason, at the same time, or within a space of a few minutes, they all sat down. Now, 2 of them were from Pakistan. They were so grateful that we were chanting because they said they had so much trouble, they couldn't do this in Pakistan. And they were, I'm guessing they were ISKCON devotees, I'm not sure. But they certainly, one of them knew how to lead kirtan, so I think they were ISKCON devotees. But the others, they were just curious members of the public. So there's different types of kirtan, and for sit-down kirtan, a group of us are doing sit-down kirtan at Hampstead Heath. So most of you will probably know that during lockdown, or just after lockdown, a group of us went to Regent's Park to chant, and then we got kicked out because the rules are you can't chant in Regent's Park. So we just thought we'd try Hampstead Heath Park, and we did. And that was just after lockdown, and everyone was so, almost crazy because they hadn't had any association with anyone. They'd been locked in a house for months, that they were really, really receptive. So devotees were distributing books like anything, and we had a chanting party. So that started a trend. We started to do that day after day. And then after a few years, we were doing it every year, but after a few years we stopped. Now last year we did about 20 hours worth. We did about 5 days of 4 hours. But this year, as far as I'm aware, no one's gone to Hampstead Heath. But on Sunday, which is tomorrow, we're going, which is Kadasi, nice time to come. So I'm just putting this out there. If you're free Sunday between 12 and 4, please come to Hampstead Heath. And it's the usual destination. If you don't know where it is, it's on the WhatsApp groups. I've posted the location. It's just near one of the car parks. And we're just hoping that it'll be nice weather. And if we chant, and hopefully some member of the public will come and sit down. Because it makes a big difference. Remember that devotee, I've forgotten her name. She was called Suan, Chinese devotee. She became initiated by Indrajumna Maharaj. She would come for walks in Hampstead Heath. And she used to see the devotees, and she was attracted. And she saw them day after day. And finally, she started chanting with us. She started visiting the temple, etc. And one thing led to another. So it's wonderful when members of the public sit down and chant, because you get quality time there. And I've noticed that you don't get it so much when you're standing up. Sometimes people will dance with you. On a Saturday night they will, because everyone's drunk. I think it's their good fortune to be drunk. It's a sinful activity, but it makes them lose their inhibition, and therefore they engage in chanting Hare Krishna. It's kind of the blessings. Sometimes sinful activity kind of has a blessing in disguise. I remember I used to live at Sydney Temple, and there was one devotee. He was a little bit rough, but he's very sincere. And he got into an argument on Sankirtan, book distribution, and he had a scuffle, and the person he was fighting with, they fell on the ground and cracked their skull. So the judge was very interesting. The judge summed up by saying, the Hare Krishna people are very, very nice people, but you're a bad example. That's what he said. And he gave him community service. And this devotee, being thoughtful, he said, can I do my community service at the Hare Krishna temple? And he arranged to wash pots. And then after that, other minor criminals, they also had the option to do community service at the Hare Krishnas. So the Hare Krishnas used to get all these pot washers who had minor convictions. And there was one Prabhupada disciple there who was saying, this is strange, because it's like, it's a sinful activity, but they're getting ultimate benefit, so it doesn't work. But that's devotional service. Karmani nirdahati kinchuta bhakti bhajyam. Just by engaging in devotional service, all one's karma gets destroyed. And Lord Nityananda, Patra Patra Vichara Nahi Nahi Stana Stana. Anyone, regardless of who they are, they all get the opportunity for devotional service. So there's no, obstacles, even bad karma. So yeah, so we were discussing. So this is the beauty of Dharma. So Dharma, for this age, Dharma means the Yuga Dharma. Yeah. Kali Kalera Dharma, Krishna Nama Sankirtan. Or Kali Kali Nama Rupi, Krishna Avatar. Krishna descends in Kali Yuga in his holy name. So at the beginning just after Mangalarti, one of the Namamrita verses was read out, or statements of Prabhupada. And Prabhupada says, realization of the Lord begins with the holy name. So first of all, we hear the holy name, and then we get access to Krishna through the holy name. So let's talk about this third verse. I mentioned there's 3 verses, mention the word Dharma. Here's another one. And this verse is what Prabhupada calls the definition of religion. Now, we're part of a religious movement. Sometimes we say we're not a religion. Sometimes say we are a religion. Sometimes say we're a science and not a religion. Sometimes say this is not faith, this is science. And other times we say, unless you have faith, you cannot make any spiritual advancement. Sometimes we say we're Hindus, and sometimes say we're not Hindus. So we say everything we say, we contradict each other all the time. So this verse, which is the definition of religion. Now, I've been told that the etymology of religion means to connect with Krishna, or to connect with God. So it means like yoga. Religia, if Vishwambar Prabhu was here, I'd ask him, because he knows a bit of Latin. But religia means connection with the divine, communion, or as we call it, yoga, and in particular, Bhakti Yoga. So if you want to know the definition of religion, someone asks you that, you can quote the Bhagavatam, because Srila Prabhupada said this verse is the definition of religion. So if you know the verse, sing along with me. Savai pumsham paro dharmo yato bhaktir athokshaje ahoy tukya pratihata yayatma suprasidate. The supreme occupation, dharma, for all humanity is that by which men can attain to loving devotional service unto the transcendental Lord. Such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted in order to completely satisfy the self. So, if you read the purport to this verse, Prabhupada says, I have translated dharma as occupation. And this is the verse. The supreme occupation, in brackets, dharma. So, Prabhupada making a point. Occupation is what sustains us. We all have to work in order to earn a living. Or, if we're not earning a living, we have to work at the temple in order that we get to stay at the temple in order to survive. So everyone is working to survive. And Prabhupada explains that dharma comes from the dhr dhatu, which means to sustain. Therefore, occupation is a very appropriate word for dharma because occupation sustains us financially, and the supreme occupation sustains our existence spiritually. So as we know, it doesn't matter how much money you have, you will never be happy unless you're engaged in devotional service. And when Lord Chaitanya was questioning Ramananda Roy, he asked, what is the greatest wealth? He said, love for Radha Krishna is the greatest wealth. So there are so many wealthy people in this world, but none of them are ultimately happy. And even some of them get into court cases and sometimes they lose, some of them get divorced and they lose half their wealth and they become very morose, etc. So the real wealth and the real happiness is through devotional service. Let us discuss again the Vedas. So in the Bhagavad Gita, I was mentioning before, this verse from the Padma Purana begins, Vyamohaya chiracharasya jagatas tete puranagamas, that the Vedas are there to keep us in illusion. So let us discuss this a little bit more. So the question was, why keep us in illusion? The answer was because our material desires are keeping us in illusion, and therefore the Puranas, they actually bring us forward. They actually, if one follows, say one follows the Shiva Purana, one thinks Shiva is supreme, or one thinks the Kali is supreme, then it's understood that in the next life, that person can continue their path and ultimately become a Vaishnava. One time, Srila Prabhupada was asked, which is better, to follow the Vedas but not be a devotee, or to follow Christianity? Now, very often, Prabhupada would criticize demigod worship, as Krishna does, kamas taistairita jnana, prabhajantenya devataha. Those whose desires have been stolen by illusion worship the demigods. But Prabhupada would not say the same thing about Christianity. He would describe it as a type of devotional service. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, if you see pure devotional service in another culture, in another language, in another tradition, you should respect it as such, and you should think to yourself, they are worshipping my God in a different way. Let me learn. Let me understand. Let me learn from them how they're worshipping God. It's the same God. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he makes this point that advanced devotees, they do not think my way is the only way. They understand that pure devotional service can exist in other forms. Having said that, he says of all the types of pure devotional service, or he uses all types of dharma, even all types of pure dharma, which he refers to as paradharma, the greatest manifestation of that is Vaishnava dharma. So we can understand that we will find pure dharma within some practitioners of the traditions of the other religions of the world, but in its expanded form, where we get to actually take ourselves all the way to Vrindavan, like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He's in Mathura now. He's about to enter Vrindavan. But if we want to go to Vrindavan, that is our goal, then we have to follow the Vaishnava Dharma. You see? So, and actually Prabhupada, he said it's a namaparad to consider the name of God in other traditions to be mundane. It's all transcendental. So you have to consider Allah, Jehovah, so on, Yahweh, etc. You have to respect those as divine names, and if you don't, then you might find you don't get a taste in chanting your japa, even though you're chanting the Mahamantra. And this is what, in one purport in the Bhagavatam, Srila Prabhupada is discussing the 10 offenses to the holy name, and he mentions that it's an offense to consider the other names of God to be mundane. So what happens to... So going back to the question, they asked Prabhupada, which is better, to follow the Vedas, like as in demigod worship, etc., or to follow Christianity? But in spite of what I've just said, Prabhupada said it's better to follow within the Vedic culture. Why? Because ultimately, if you follow within the Vedic culture, you'll come to the Vaishnava path. You know, we can associate with Christians, but will we come to in contact with Vaishnavas? No. But if you follow Vedic scriptures, you will be you'll be visiting temples, you'll be associating with sadhus, and you will unknowingly associate with a pure Vaishnava, and through that association, you'll get the Bhakti-Lada Bij, and then it will develop in this life or in a future life, you'll have that attraction for Krishna. And we're also fortunate because all the yata mat tata pat, all this, as Prabhupada would sometimes call hodgepodge Hinduism, we've actually come in, many of us are not from the Indian culture, but we've come in just through Prabhupada, and he has cleared all that away, and we have a fresh slate. And it's sometimes said, and I've never checked this, but I've heard it said several times, some music schools, if you're already know how to play that instrument, they charge you extra to train you up. They say that. Why? Because you have to unlearn what you've learned, what you've done wrong. So many of us, we're very fortunate to have a clean slate. We know nothing about the subtleties of Hindu culture, and therefore when Prabhupada says something, we just accept. Some people, they know so much that they want to contradict Prabhupada. So it's a blessing to know nothing, in some sense, in this particular example. So this is what it means by Mahajano Yena Gata Sapanta. We follow the Mahajans. And as I mentioned previously, that was what Prakashananda Saraswati said. So he was the great scholar who had so many followers, but just by associating with Mahaprabhu, he understood this statement, which is in the purport, Nasav Rishi Yashyamatam Nabina. And he rejected the Chaya Darshan. The 6 philosophical systems, he says, they're actually imperfect. Mahajano Yena Gata Sapanta, was the conclusion. And we see this so often throughout the pastime of Lord Chaitanya. There was a deliverance of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, another example. He was a great Pandit. And this is another example we have this example of the Sanodiya Brahmana. The reason the Sanodiya Brahmana is considered to be low-class Brahmana is because they give instructions to certain low-class Vaishyas. It's mentioned in the previous purport. Some Vaishyas, they drink intoxicants. And the Sanodiya Brahmanas, traditionally, they are the gurus to those Vaishyas. So they're considered less like that. So this is an example of what Narad Muni teaches Yudhisthira in the Śrīmad-Bhagavatam. Yasya ya lakshanam praktam varnashrama vivyanjaka yadanyatrapi drishyata tatinaiva vinirdishyet. Narad Muni tells Yudhisthira Maharaj, if you see the qualities of, say, a Brahmana in someone who's in the family of a Shudra, you should understand that person's position by the qualities, not by the birth. So we judge people, and actually we don't judge anyone. Everyone's a pure devotee, ultimately. We're all Jivera Swarupa Hoy Krishnera Nichidas. But on the material platform, we have to distinguish in order that we can become pure. We have to associate with the right people. So Narad Muni tells Yudhisthira Maharaj, is what you see in the person. Or as it says in the Bhagavad Gita, Chaturvarna Maya Shrishta, Guna Karma Vibhagasaha. The Varnashram system is based on guna. It's not Janma Karma Vibhagasaha. It's not based on birth. So this idea of rejecting one's position according to birth, this is prominent within the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. We have the examples of Rupa and Sanatana Goswami. They were ostracized Brahmanas, and yet they were the intimate associates of the Lord. Haridas Thakur is from a Mohammedan background. He was the intimate associate. And all those personalities, they would not enter Jagannath Puri temple. The Orthodox Hindus, they wouldn't let them in. Also, but they weren't making a fuss about it. We make a fuss about it. We're always saying, oh, you let us in, let us in. So Rupa and Sanatana Goswami, he voluntarily stayed away because he had humility. He said, I don't want my body to touch the pandas at the Jagannath temple, because he's got these sores, he's got weeping sores, and he doesn't want to contaminate, so he keeps a distance. Then you have Raghunath Das Goswami. He's just begging, and then he thinks, I'm not going to beg. And he takes the leftover prasad from the Jagannath temple that's now rotten, and the cows are eating in it, and he takes that and he eats that. And then when Mahaprabhu came, he grabs a piece. He wants to take the remnants of Raghunath Das Goswami, and he grabs a piece of this hardened, rotten rice that's been left for the cows, and he eats a bit. And Raghunath Das was like, what are you doing? But it said, was it, Bhakti Pada Duli, or Bhakti Pada Jal, Bhakti Bhukta Avasesh, Tina Mahabal. The dust of the devotees, the water that's washed their feet, and the food remnants, they are Tina Mahabal, very, very powerful in giving us devotional service, in awakening devotional service. So we see this example with Mahaprabhu. And I mentioned Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. His fault, he thought, I really like this Chaitanya, so much so that I want to initiate him into the Sarasvat Sampradaya. Because, Mahaprabhu, was initiated by Keshava Bharati. The Bharati Sampradaya is considered lower than the Sarasvat Sampradaya. So he wanted to initiate him, give him a higher status of sannyas. And Gopinath Acharya, he's like, what are you saying? This person has the symptoms of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and you want to upgrade his varna, his ashram. You want to upgrade him to a higher status of sannyas. And finally, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya got it. Eventually, he got it. And what's the pastime? It's another prasad pastime. Gopinath Acharya comes one morning, gives him some prasad, or was it Lord Chaitanya, I forget. Immediately, he honors the prasadam before he takes a shower. And that was a sign that finally he's got it. He's actually understood. He's got his priorities right. He understood what rules are more important. And it's important that we honor prasadam immediately when we're given it, you see. So this is all the examples of the Kaitava Dharma being taught by example. The Caitanya-Caritāmṛta is full of examples where the Paradharma is given prominence, and Mahaprabhu, he's doing it through associating with devotees from low caste. Not all of the associates were low caste. Many of them were very high class, like Srivas Pandit, Advaita Acharya, Paka Brahmanas. So Lord Chaitanya's associates, they all serve, their status is there to teach us. Those are from a low caste, that is to teach us that caste does not matter. And those from a high caste, we should understand, Advaita Acharya, Srivas Pandit, they're high class Brahmanas, and they accepted Lord Chaitanya as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, we should all accept like this, you see. So these are my thoughts, and thank you so much for your time and patience. And we still have a few minutes left, so if anyone has any comments or questions or corrections, thank you. If we bring a microphone to either of these two Prabhus.
Thank you, Ru.
Hare Krishna.
It appears that this Sanodiya Brahmana, whatever, he got the food from non-Brahmana, but he could offer himself, see, and then eat. But
who could offer?
Like you said he received the food from non-Brahmana.
Mahaprabhu, yeah.
Oh yeah. So, but for example, there is other instances when they said you accept food from non-devotee or whatever, but
you can offer
yourself.
This so is habit. Mahaprabhu could just take from anyone and just say offer himself.
We have this habit, but it appears that this is total bogus. Take commercial food and then offer if it's not need really. And he's wondering, is that accepted anyway? So, no, it is individual, you should judge. Like, for example, lately somebody offered tons of those protein bars and flapjacks. Every department has crates of it. And we offer that it's addictive, it's tasty, but it's very unhealthy, hydrogenated food stuff. But influence consciousness, I'm just thinking, this should not be even brought here, because you can do this anyway. But So
if
this
devotees
kind of
here
thing,
stop eating
that
them, they'll
means-
stop bringing them, I guess.
Yeah, but if it's not need, if it's we are desperate, we don't have money,
Yeah.
somebody offer anything.
Yeah.
Then, but in these conditions, I see this everywhere, and then it's like this one example of accepting such a food, you know, like. It appears simply that to offer such food, even if it's given, even if it's vegetarian, so-called, it's kind of bogus. You know,
Yes.
It's not accepted.
There's only a little, I mean, sometimes Prabhupada would say, in an emergency, you're on Sankirtan, you can do such things, you can purchase such things and eat, offer it, but as a general principle, we want to stick to home cooking with love and
Like
devotion.
some devotees don't even cook at home, they go to restaurants.
Yeah.
In many ways. It's individual, I don't judge anyone. But this kind of thing hampers
It's
our
good to be free.
consciousness.
It's good to be free from restaurants altogether.
Definitely. Like, you know, I always say one thing, if one would be strict with himself just few months in terms of eating only, very strict,
Yeah.
you would see difference in his consciousness, in Krishna consciousness.
Thank you.
We kind of bury ourselves with this, and then we don't even notice how slow we're progressing. Anyway, sorry.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Prajna Prabhu. Prasadam is
I'm
soon.
relating to Śrī Caitanya-Caritāmṛta Madhya.
Okay, yeah.
He had some brahmacharis come round, and this person stayed behind, and he sat down, eating the remnants of the brahmacharis. He says, "This is for the real nectar."
Fantastic.
Nice, isn't it? Sweet.
Here's some advice about eating remnants. There's Bob Cohen, who became Brahmatirtha Prabhu. He, this is where we get perfect questions, perfect answers. He met Prabhupada and he asked the perfect questions and Prabhupada gave the perfect answers. And at one point he said, I got a problem with my liver and the prasadam is very, full of ghee. It's not good for my health. What should I do? Because it's prasadam, I should honor it. And Prabhupada said, if you're not on that platform, you shouldn't take the prasadam. You have to consider your health. It's all about consciousness. Now Prahlad Maharaj, he could digest poison because he was on that platform. He saw it as Krishna. If we're not on that platform, we have to eat and choose what we eat that's healthy. So we have to be careful. If we go rummaging around other people's plates, especially if you do it in India, you might end up with food poisoning. Now there was this, was it Kala Krishnadas? There was a famous personality, associate of the Lord, and his whole thing was he wanted to take the remnants of all the advanced devotees, so he would feed devotees intentionally just so that he could then sneak their remnants at some point in the future. So yeah, but if we're not on that platform, we might get health problems. Hare Krishna. There's a few ladies want to ask questions. Oh, Manizo.
Thank you for the class, Prabhu. In the purport, Prabhupada is pointing out that when the deity is one, when the process is one, for example, Krishna is the object of our worship, and we're engaged in bhakti, then there should be no disagreements. Otherwise, there is disagreements.
Yes.
But we find amongst Krishna worshippers, there's a lot of disagreement, differences of opinion. Amongst Gaudiya Vaishnavas, there's also differences of opinion.
Yes.
Amongst ISKCON devotees also,
Yes.
there's differences of opinion. Even simple things like, should we eat chocolate or not?
Yes.
Right? And there's
Massive.
two different extremes in terms of how we should preach and share Krishna consciousness
Yes.
with others. It seems like there's more disagreements amongst Vaishnavas, even
Yes,
ISKCON,
yes.
than possibly outside.
Exactly. Very good
So
point.
then how do we, we understand
I'll say a
this?
few things in that connection. I think there's a number of ways we can look at this. One time one devotee said to me, I thought it was a nice analogy, he said, if you go to a swimming pool, all the splashing is at the shallow end. So people with shallow consciousness, they can end up fighting each other, and they end up falling out, and some of them end up leaving the movement. So we have to be very careful about that. Those who are more advanced, they tend to be more guarded about these things, and they don't tend to disagree. Now, on this point about contradictions, you know, this one of the TV interviews, Prabhupada, one time the interviewer asked Prabhupada, and he goes, there's so many scriptures saying different things, don't you find contradictions? And Prabhupada said, I don't see any contradiction. And I was like, oh, how is that possible? So the point about this is that those with deep consciousness, they do not see contradiction. I think this thing about one deity, one process, I think this is referring to Bhagavad Gita Mahatmya. You know, there's Eko Devo Devaki Putra Gitam. Eko is one process, worshipping him. But going back to your point, because if devotees aren't advanced, one may be wrong and one may be right. Actually, both may be wrong and still disagree. And that's part of the reason why we have this disagreement. One may not have pure vision. But there's also another aspect of this. Sometimes even the great souls disagree. And if you read Chaitanya Bhagavat, you'll find often, it's mentioned quite a lot, where Vrindavan, was it Vrindavan Das Thakur, he says, if you pick sides when you see these different, then you're doomed. So he's making the point that devotees, even advanced devotees, say they may disagree with each other, but we shouldn't pick sides, because if we pick sides, we could end up spoiling our devotional life. So sometimes there's more than one correct answer, and sometimes those disagreements are pastimes. But sometimes they're not pastimes. And yeah, so we get a lot of differences of opinion and what to do. It can be, sometimes both are right, sometimes Krishna's inspiring both, and they're both correct. Sometimes one's right and one's covered by illusion. Sometimes both are covered by illusion. So yeah, it's what makes it difficult. And therefore we have to tread carefully. We don't pick sides. Or if we do pick sides, we have to make sure we pick the right side, or else we're in trouble. Hare Krishna. Anyway, thank you. It's a partial answer. Just have maybe two more, and then we'll adjourn for some prasadam.
Hare Krishna. Thank you
Hare
for your
Krishna.
talk. You said that Lord Chaitanya came to establish Dharma because there's cheating leaders. Can you explain more on that?
Because what?
Cheating and disagreements of leaders.
Oh yes. Well, obviously, I mean, at the time, before Lord Chaitanya advented, some of his senior associates, like Srivas Pandit, Haridas Thakur, Advaitacharya, they're all older, and they were lamenting that Navadvip had become the stronghold of all kinds of atheistic false philosophies. So Lord Chaitanya's advent was to correct that. You see, so at the time, Navadvip had fallen into a hodgepodge of different atheistic philosophies. And Lord Chaitanya came to give the Yuga Dharma. And it's actually, if we want to understand philosophy, we can't do it without the Yuga Dharma. Therefore, by chanting Hare Krishna, the philosophy will be revealed within our hearts, the actual truth. Dharmasya tattvam nihitam guhayam. When we hear the Mahamantra and we associate with the Mahajans, then we receive the actual philosophy. Correctly, the Siddhanta becomes manifest in our hearts. And Mahaprabhu came to give that, and he did it through the process mainly of the chanting to the masses. He discussed Vedanta Sutra with the Mayavad sannyasis, and he discussed very elevated topics of scripture, intimate topics with his intimate associates. Okay.
Krishna, thank you.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, I think it's based on the last gentleman's question, but
Paramakruna, thank you.
I couldn't hear all of it, but
Yeah.
it's to do with that sentence. The Vedas, Puranas, and great learned sages are not always in agreement. Nobody's in agreement. We're individuals. So we have our own opinions, obviously, in the material world as well as the spiritual. So hence religion was formed from there. But we don't go about making our own religion, do we? We follow those.
Yes.
So it was ordained for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think...
Let me just quote from the purport. Since everyone has a different body and mind, different types of religions are needed. That's the essence of it all. And many of those differences are within the Vedic corpus, which is why the critics say it's contradictory. And we say it's for different people. It's a collection of paths, And finally, see, the Bhagavad Gita is where all the paths merge. They come together with the Bhagavad Gita. Yam idam pushpitam vacham prabhavancha vipaschitaha Veda vadarata parta nanyadyatstiti vadanaha. The followers of the Vedas, they are thinking, what is it? Yam imam pushpitam vacham. They are attracted by the flowery words of the Vedas. So that's materialism. The Vedas have so much flowery words. Now Mahaprabhu, nadanam na sundarim, nadanam na janam na sundarim, kavitam vadagishyakami. When we translate this, we say, nadanam, I do not want wealth, najanam, followers, sundari, woman. But what about kavita? If you look at the translation of this verse, which is found in the Antalila, final chapter, kavita means like the flowery words of the Vedas, something like that. So the Vedas are rejected. These flowery words of the Vedas are rejected by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. They're rejected by Krishna, Sarvadama Prityaja, or Yamimam Pushpitam Vacham. All these, you see, or Vishaya, Trigunya Vishaya Veda. This whole thing about understanding what the Vedas are, what they're for, and how to transcend them, it's there in the Bhagavad Gita, which is ABC. And then it's elaborated in the Śrīmad-Bhagavatam, and in Mahaprabhu's pastimes, you'll see over and over again how the Dharma is breached in favor of Paradharma, whether it's the Sanadiya Brahmana, whether it's Haridas Thakur, who was carried by the Lord. He's carrying the Muhammadan because he's the greatest devotee. Hare Krishna. But yeah, Prabhu. Last point. Thank you.
Sorry, Prabhu. Thank you so much for such a wonderful class. My question is that we learn from the Bhagavatam is the cream of the crop of the Vedas. But if we reject the Vedas, why do we accept the Bhagavatam?
Where is Trigunya Vishya Veda, Nishtraiguna Bhavajana. Reject the Trigunya Vedas. But within the Vedas, it's not all Trigunya. There's the Paradharmas there within the Vedas. And it's there within the Puranas, some of them. Puranas are divided into Sattvika, Rajasic, Tamasic. And if you notice the Puranas that Prabhupada quotes, they're nearly always the Sattvic Puranas, like the Padma Purana, Brihad Naradiya Purana, all these Puranas. So the cream of the Vedas is Paradharma, and it's there. But you have to come, that's why the Paramahamsas are sometimes considered to be like swans, because swans can separate milk from water. And it's actually a fact, because they have an enzyme, biologically, there's an enzyme in their mouths, that when the milk curdles, and sometimes they're like bees as well. Bees, they can go from flower to flower, take the nectar. The same way, the Mahajans, they can go from scripture to scripture, and they see, and Mahaprabhu says, Kevala Pratikya, what's that word? Kevala Pratikya? Kevala Pratikya, I forgot the verse now. Mahaprabhu says, the Vedas only say one thing, Kevala Krishnaki. Vedara Pratigya Kevala Krishnaki, or something like that. Veda Kohi Pratigya. The Vedas ultimately only say one thing. Everything points to Krishna. So when you become a Mahajan, every verse of the Vedas, you'll see Krishna in every single verse, and all the contradictions will be reconciled. Grantaraj Śrī Caitanya-Caritāmṛta Madhya ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanandi. It's Vedara Pratigya Kevala Kohaki Krishnaki.
Mm.